But they leave the casino and they go somewhere else entirely. And there's a little bit of a scene of a shot where they're in that other place, and then it cuts to the Hong Kong police department, and the main inspector in Hong Kong is told that Kowloon, or maybe not Kowloon, maybe the other guy is in the casino, and you're like, no, he's not. He left 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. So that's one scene in particular, but also in this like time doesn't make sense to me, if that makes sense, because like, okay, like you have this whole like stage of him like going rogue. So he has like the most standard cliche 3-act arc throughout the course of this, where he's like, hey, going rogue, it gets personal, goes into this like year depression where he has what I think is arguably one of the worst parts of the movie, is like this like weird like depression like fake mustache.
I kind of really did like the character design of that section though. Like the hair kind of over the face, just enough of an annoying thing that like when he's looking somewhere else and not at you, it's like very on purpose, and he's totally avoiding whatever. It was very clear that he was in a weird mental fog.
You saw that like when he met to meet the doctor at the gym. Mm-hmm. She was the teacher, and I thought that scene was handled very eloquently. I felt like you really got to understand a little bit more of his mindset, so to say, like his mental health in that moment, because I mean he's grieving the loss of his fiance, who it's never really kind of cleared up whether or not she has been murdered or whether or not she's gone missing, because she just, it's another thing the film just doesn't explain until like very end.
Yeah, she's theoretically in the bag, but it's like a Seven thing where it's like, what's in the box?
Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah. Is she there or isn't she? I don't know. The thing that I really did appreciate about that character design, though, was there was a moment where we as viewers kind of went, wait, is that the same guy?
Yeah. Because he doesn't look anything alike.
No, he doesn't. His hair's grown. Like when he starts, he's got this really like BA undercut. And his shirt's open to like his mid chest. You can kind of see a little bit of this tattoo of the dragon that he's famous for. And he's very confident, and it just like complete 180s into sort of a borderline drunken master, kind of not stumbling about exactly, but he's not really looking at anybody. He's sort of just clearly not taking care of himself. My favorite bit was there was a single part where he's wearing a Converse shoe on one foot and it looked like a Croc on the other. Like he was not at all paying attention to his own.
There's also another scene where there's a scene in particular where someone gives him this like iPod shuffle, and she's like, just listen to it. And
this is like part 2 of your medication.
Yeah, so he pops it in, and it's like this like anime open essentially. And he's like doing this like training montage. I don't know how you felt about it, but I think it was both like illustrates his like the laughs to where like he's doing crunches, and he like lifts up his shirt and you see this like fake fat stomach, and he's like slapping it and like wanting it to go away, and then it just kind of goes back into the montage. And I was like, that's both genius, like playing for laughs, but also like really showing where this character is at and throughout this year of grieving.
Yeah, the piece that stuck out to me there was when he's clearly so focused that he's doing push-ups on the conference table and like a desk in the police department, and all the guys walk in, kind of take one look and go, we'll use a different conference table, and they walk back out.
Yeah, so like time kind of doesn't really like make sense in this, like I said previously, because like it's like that whole year has like really the only thing that kind of is ever established. And
they tell you very quickly.
Yeah.
Like the whole first, like, it's probably of the movie, it feels like they're going from shot to shot to shot. Just like, this very is one time period, and then this is another time period, and this is another one. I got lost, I think, halfway through at one point.
But even throughout the rest of the movie, like, there are, like, spots, like, so when they're kind of, like, trying to flesh out the relationship between Sinclair and Kowloon, it starts with this boxing match, or this MMA match, that they kind of both did, and but
like a charity match for the police department or something.
But like the way that shot is like started, like set up, it's never really ever established that this is a flashback. Like it feels like it's present day, and it's not until they're like actually fading out and you see like all the police like sitting around the television watching it. And like there's several shots that are intended to be these flashback sequences that never really get introduced as a flashback sequence. It's just like present day.
Yeah.
Bam!
The only one that really made sense kind of as a flashback was the one that was really more of a Sherlock Holmesian kind of moment.
I did appreciate that one.
Yeah, where he's kind of... So the one police officer... because the whole thing is there's female police officers who are being murdered. And then left in easy to discover places. And they don't really explain why Kowloon is the best one to be able to find out who is doing this. But they do try very hard to kind of lean into the idea of there's pressure on Kowloon to do it. But he's also very much on his own pace. Kind of like, I have to do it my way. And that felt very Sherlock Holmes to me. But this one particular bit felt like one of the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies, where he sort of... He's walking, he's approaching kind of the crime scene, and then suddenly he like spins like he's either he's being choked or he's choking someone else. And then it cuts in the scene from... the actual
abduction.
Police officer being strangled like that. And it sort of goes back and forth. And the main way you can tell is because in one of them it's raining. But it just sort of culminates in kind of a goofy way. But it was very clear, I think, from the outset that it was sort of half flashback, half...
And they did that early. They did that a little bit later in the movie where he's like... having one of those Sherlock moments, and then it flashes to him actually, like, just finding out that Sinclair was the killer.
Yeah.
Which I'm like...
that was a little...
that's such a long shot. Like...
It was the same... It was the same death scene, too.
Yeah, you're just, like, convenient. So it's, like, it's... I don't know.
He just suddenly... you as a viewer suddenly realize that it's the Brazilian mixed martial artist who's choking this police
Which he did...
woman.
All right, so let's talk about Sinclair. Because he just does not... He feels so out of place in this movie. Like, again, it was like someone was, like, watched a MMA fight, and they were like, this guy could have a career in acting.
Yeah. So his background as a like the character's background makes a lot of sense, I think. He's sort of he's put up as a Marine Corps veteran who fought in, I think he said Fallujah and somewhere else, and I'm blanking on the other place. But I guess he got stationed in Japan for a while, and then meets one of the other characters in this who's called Lady.
Yeah, again, did not make sense either.
Yeah, they didn't really explain that terribly well.
I liked the conversation that was like revolving around that when she got introduced. He's like, "Oh, wouldn't you like to be called man?"
that was funny. But there's no real explanation as to why she's there until you sort of have to extrapolate from what Sinclair says, that he was in the Marine Corps and then did this. But there's no explanation as to why he's a fight-off guy. And his introduction generally is kind of cool with the whole like killer Croc in the hot tub kind of thing. That was neat.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it felt like this movie didn't really initially have a villain, and so he just kind of feels like shoehorned in as a other plot element. Like he's never fleshed out. Like he just doesn't seem like he really belongs here.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Well, I mean, they don't even really explain his motivation until almost at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's like this weird flashback scene where it's like his kid is like upset that he lost this charity fight.
Yeah,
which...
and it's very clear that Sinclair's been blaming Kowloon for something for this entire movie. Initially, it just seems like he needs to have a rematch, and then this like flashback happens.
So like the flashback reveals that like him and his kid have this fight and
At like a traffic
light. Traffic, and then he gets hit by a car and he dies.
The son does.
The son
gets out of the car, is like backing up, and then like turns and
bam,
wham.
And that's just an unfair kind of thing right there. And I think one of the cheesiest moments with him, I don't want to Silva's not a good actor. Any circumstances.
He's the reason we think this sounds like Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah. I think we're circling in around Tommy Wiseau's country of origin. Kowloon with Silva, one thing too that kind of other issues that I had was the cross language with the dialogues.
Yeah.
Just again, coming into that one, Infant Man 4 has a part in the narrative where it brings the character to California. And so as they're going through California, they're, of course, speaking English.
Right.
But it's only for like maybe 15 minutes out of a 2-hour movie.
Sure.
Like the rest of it is like knows what it wants to be, and it's keeping to that.
Mm-hmm. It's clearly in Mandarin or Cantonese or whatever language they're speaking.
And this one bounces back between English, very badly dubbed English, I might say too. There
was a point where I looked at you and I was like, wait, is the English actually like naturally in this film? And it was Silva speaking.
So bad.
And it was just rough because it's, Silva and Kowloon and somebody else. And whenever the two actors of Asian descent were speaking, you could clearly tell they were speaking English.
Yeah.
But it would go to Silva, and either Silva is facing a completely different direction, so it could be dubbed, or he's looking at you. And granted, if he really is Brazilian American, English is probably not his first language.
No.
It's probably Portuguese. Mm-hmm. But even still, there was just moments where we kind of were just looking at each other trying to figure out what was going on.
Portuguese is another language that manages to finagle its way into here.
It just pops in.
Yeah, and it's super weird because it's like it happens at like random like spots where like Silva will speak Portuguese.
I think it was just that one spot.
Okay, fair, but it's so random.
It's like the conversation between him and his love interest.
Yeah.
Which, given context clues, maybe you can initially figure out that they're not speaking the language the film has mostly been in up until this point. But it's not until partway in where somebody goes, "Oh, I bet they're speaking Portuguese."
In the Cantonese, even I would even kind of dare say that it doesn't feel correctly dubbed. Like there were parts in like the first act where I'm like, this is moving incredibly fast, and the lips are moving slower than the words that are coming out of their mouths.
When I was looking this film up to begin with, the date that I found for release was, I think, back in March, but it said Japan. So which makes me wonder if this film came out originally in Japan, in Japanese, except for maybe the English parts. And maybe they've just overdubbed a lot of the rest of it. But I think part of what made it really hard to actually understand was the subtitles. Because in some films it'll give you things like in Spanish this, and then in whatever the other language is this. It just sort of went from one to the other, and so there wasn't enough Portuguese for me to really pick up on. Oh, okay, Silva and Lady are speaking in a language that the other characters don't understand. And maybe part of that is just the editing of the the actual shots as well, because it was sort of going back and forth between three perspectives. Lady in